Well, hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. And this is going to be a great day. And you know why, Tim? because
Because we had a great Thanksgiving.
Christmas cheer is here.
Babe, Christmas cheer was here about 2 months ago for
Don't
you.
tell them that. They don't know.
They know because they see the Christmas
Okay,
stuff.
full disclosure, it's true. We starting on Halloween
You
night.
and our youngest daughter.
On Halloween night, because there was no trick-or-treating this year because COVID.
Halloween.
We pulled out the trees and put the lights on. We didn't decorate them. The next night, which was November 1st, we actually
decorated.
We had
That's
the
2
kids
months.
decorate them. I know, but look at it's
early.
so and you're not going to be a Scrooge about it. You're actually
Why does everybody that wants to have a reasonable Christmas season a Scrooge?
You know what's so funny? Okay, we've joked about the Enneagram before, and so you guys, if you don't know about the Enneagram, Google it. By now, you need to know. But there's the eights in regards to this whole
That's me.
conversation. They're the ones like there will not be a single Christmas ornament put up until December begins. Nobody's allowed to do that. That's what they're
That's
known
a
for.
perfect timing.
I know.
That is perfect timing.
Yeah, I know. And I'm
December 12th.
I was like, let's bring on we need some Christmas cheer up in here. That's all
Yeah,
I'm saying.
that's what we need. We just finished Thanksgiving. It's time for Christmas.
You know what I think
Let's
though,
go.
and this is a good segue to what we're going to talk about today.
What are we talking
Is
about?
that I felt anxiety even in October about, of course, the elections and all of that mess, but also them talking. We're moving, especially where we are in California and nationally and internationally. The COVID situation seems to be getting bigger and moving into the purple tier. And they're talking shutdowns again, and now we're in a shutdown. And I honestly feel like I needed to escape the reality of possibly going backwards. I feel like I was triggered back to in March when everything shut down and we had a forced pause. And today we're talking about purpose in the pause.
Purpose in the pause, because all we needed to do was bend the curve. Wasn't that what it was called?
Yeah.
We talked about that. And we bent the curve. Now we got the curve back up. And now we got to, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's my reason. That's my way of dealing is to decorate.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about
The pause. Yes.
First of all, as an 8 or an A-type personality,
Yes.
I don't know
Those
if
go
are
well
the same.
together. Yes,
Okay.
typically.
Well, the fact of the matter is I really don't like pauses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind when I pause. And I'll talk about that in a minute, the two kinds of pauses, but I don't like a forced pause. This is annoying to me.
Tell me why. Because
I want to get stuff done.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to get to the gym. I want my coffee shop open to where I can go sit inside. Because now if I go to the coffee shop, I have to sit outside in 43 degree. For those of you who
That's
back
really
east
cold.
somewhere, forget it. That's as cold as it gets here.
Yes.
But it's too cold to work out there, and my hands are cold.
Yeah.
I could tell you more.
Well, everybody has their reason for why. I was curious what yours are, because everybody has their different reasons for why that makes
you?
them uncomfortable.
What about, does it make you uncomfortable? Or do you even notice?
I think I lean, okay, so I'm a 9. We lean into being able to rest easier than others, but that doesn't mean we don't have anxiety. It plays out in other ways. So when I think of pause, I think of isolation, which makes me very uncomfortable
Yeah.
because it's
Well, we've had no isolation.
Well, no, compared to what we're used to,
Oh,
we
yeah, that's
certainly
true.
have.
Yeah.
And just the feeling of going into a crowd, into a store, and not
Yeah.
really making eye contact and that kind of stuff. But
That's
there
my
is
life. What are you talking about?
that's
how I
why
live
that's
it.
why we married each
Yeah.
other.
Hey, that person looked at me. What's their problem?
You're like, oh, Kimberly looked at me. Let's get married.
Yeah, that is how that
I
works.
just made eye contact. Let's make that happen.
I think the biggest concern or the biggest struggle for me has been as a pastor, because
Yeah.
I'm somewhat of an introvert. On Sundays around people, I really love people.
Yeah.
Introverts love people too, by the way.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I miss that connection, and we've been doing at our Torrey Pines campus. We have a huge outside area. I mean, it's gigantic.
Shout
It's
out
big
to Torrey Pines
yeah.
Church, Pastor Mingo Palacios.
Yes, and all of those people that paid for that campus over the years. It's
Yes.
a beautiful campus up there in La Jolla. But anyway, So we've been having services outside, and I have done 3 of those since we've opened up. The first one was burning hot.
Yeah.
The second was freezing cold.
cold.
And then Sunday was burning hot
So
a couple of
weird.
weeks ago.
Yeah, but folks
it was
show
just,
up.
yeah, but there's something that happens there that I really have missed. So that kind of a pause
Yeah.
has really been difficult.
I actually think I've seen you as a leader and other leaders that are out there, type 8s or just, leaders in general. I think you've gone through your own sense of almost grief of not being able to fulfill your purpose in
Right.
what you're used to, how you're used to fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about how there is purpose in the pause. It looks different and it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
So this is such an important issue. We're going to take a couple of weeks to do this in 2 parts, but I wanted to talk about, and we wrote down a few things. So we're going to share what we wrote down, and it's kind of chit
Chat
chat
it
a
up,
little.
yes.
We're going to chit chat.
Yes.
Isn't that a candy bar? No, that's a Kit Kat. All right. Anyway, 2 kinds of pauses.
Yes.
And the 2 kinds of pauses are a planned pause and a forced pause. The planned pause is one where you have decided, you've designed to slow down. A vacation, a break of some kind. Maybe you do that on the weekends. Maybe you do it annually for a couple of weeks here or there.
You have
And
control of the
you have
pause.
control. Yeah, it's planned.
Right.
That's my favorite kind
Yeah,
of
of
pause.
course.
And probably everybody's.
Yeah.
But a forced pause is when something happens to you, either someone or something forces you to have a pause, whether it's an illness, whether it's a pandemic, a job loss.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you have to slow down and just take a pause. And so we wrote down several things, and we'll take turns doing this, but we wrote down several things how you know that you need a pause, because people like me, I don't like a pause. Now, I'm either going 100 miles an hour or I just stop.
Yeah.
Like I'm the kind of person, my mom could never do this. My siblings could tell you this. When she would sit down to with the family to watch TV, she had to do something. She had to do her nails. She had to work on some, grade papers when she was a teacher. She had to work on some project.
Yeah.
She never knew what was going on a show.
Right.
And, but I can slow down passive entertainment and just kind of absorb.
Veg out,
Which
yeah.
I don't think that's real good. But anyway, that's kind of, I'm either going 100 miles an hour or I'm complete stop. But here are some signs that you need a pause. The first one is this: you have lost passion for the important things in your life. Think about the passion that drives you, whether it's spiritual passion, career passion, passion on fixing up your house, whatever it is, something that is driving force in your life.
Yeah.
Now, we have always talked about getting organized.
Yeah. Well, I think we've
Somehow-
made moves that direction
Yeah.
over the years. It's gotten a little better, but with having such a big family and,
and all the kids
and
living
larger
with us.
homes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
with kids that come
Yeah.
and go, we have sort of like that. They circle back sometimes. So we've always kind of put that off, but yeah.
But this year,
Well, and we're not the only ones. I mean, like that's been global. I know for sure. I just saw in the news today that Home Depot's sales have skyrocketed in 2020 because everybody has decided to take on home projects.
yeah.
So good for Home Depot.
Yeah, so
somehow we can go to Home Depot, but we can't go to church.
Our
but don't get me
garage,
started.
our garage is like the best garage we've ever had.
Yeah, we got that
got
all
my
organized.
tools are actually in place.
Yeah.
Not that I use them, but anyway, all the tools are in place.
Yeah.
I dust them regularly to make it look like I've been working on them.
Hey, babe, you pull those out every once in a while. You
Yeah,
put
I
some
do.
furniture
I
together
do.
the other day.
I do stuff. I was just
Yeah,
joking.
yeah.
Anyway, and then your pantry. I mean, I
Yeah.
wish we could take the cameras into the pantry and show them. It's amazing.
It's a
You've
little
just made my
obsessive,
life
yeah.
amazing with that. Our closet
Yep.
has been done. Our house has been organized.
Yeah, there's some places
Our
still that have been
kids are
untouched.
finally organized.
They're out of the
Yeah,
house.
they get organized right out of the house.
Yeah.
So, but when you lose passion
Mm-hmm.
for life or for career, you really need to stop and take a break because
Yeah.
when you're overwhelmed, when you have so much stress, you lose that passion. That passion is one of the first things to go. What's the second one?
So I would like to do this in the form of asking questions like,
okay.
have you lost passion for the important things of life? These are things that you know are red flags that you need to actually embrace this pause instead of run from it. The second would be, does your spouse or significant people in your life, are they feeling unloved and unheard? That might be an aha moment, like I need to embrace this pause, because one of the things that suffers greatest when we're in a fast forward motion, and even in a forced quarantine lockdown situation, like we just talked about, we go into project mode. Well, we're going to find something else to keep us busy, when really one of the greatest gifts that we've had in this is being able to have real crucial conversations with loved ones, be able to listen and speak and talk through things. It's been quite a year to process, and instead of taking to social media or whatever, actually having conversations about that.
So I asked if we could go on a road trip.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't listened for a while, those of you that have know that Kimberly doesn't like my driving. I'm not sure I like my driving.
I just like being alive.
Yeah.
I like living.
I don't get in crashes much often. But anyway, so she doesn't particularly, you don't like my driving, correct?
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
In town driving, terrible.
Terrible.
Road trip driving, not so bad, Tim.
Actually, you drive, when we're together, you drive more than I do.
That's because we want to stay married.
And our daughter, Gracie, will absolutely give us a hard time if we have it the other way. Anyway, and she knows that you're wrong about you kind of bugging me about the way I drive. What? Anyway, she can't talk about it right now. So, but here's the thing. We decided to go on a road trip. And at first you weren't excited about it, but I won't go into too much detail, but we planned this road trip and we spent 10 days, 12 days, whatever it was, and traveled California and saw the beautiful sights of California.
Some of that was fires.
Yeah.
During the fire season.
That didn't hurt us much. I mean, a
was
little
just-
bit.
yeah.
But the neat thing about it was that we talked.
Yeah.
We did listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
The best podcast is Hope Rescue Podcast, but
We did
there
not
are
listen
a
to
couple
that,
of
though.
others. We didn't listen to ours. Yeah, that's your job. Our job is to speak. Your job is to listen. Anyway, here's what I found out on that road trip. That, first of all, you're my favorite person to be with.
Aw.
And I can be with you, which we were 24 hours a
Yeah.
day, 7 days a week for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks straight.
Well, before that, we had been locked in
Yeah.
for 7 months.
And we get along pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, sure, Tim,
that's the
whatever.
ticket.
But there was a lot of listening and a lot of talking,
Yeah,
and there
it
was
was good.
great conversation. If you love someone and you are not listening to them and you're not communicating with them and tell them your passions and listening to their passions and so forth, then you probably need a pause in your life. There's something going on. Here's number 3. Your boundaries are being ignored, and not only your boundaries. So
Right.
we set these boundaries for ourselves, but then also there are other people that have boundaries in our life, that there are things that we need to make sure that we don't go over their boundaries. But when you're breaching those boundaries, it's time for you to get a break, because you're not being considerate of your time, your boundaries, and people's time and people's boundaries.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we really need to take a pause
Yeah.
and rethink.
Yeah. Number 4 is your heart is feeling dull or dead, which sounds harsh, but similar to number 1. But this is distress or mild depression. And I will say I've felt some of that. Like going into like month 7, I started to feel like just kind of that like listlessness. This was before we took our road trip. And I thought the isolation and stuff, I think was getting to me. And I live for my kids and my grandkids, and we do get to see them, most of them, sadly not all of them, but most of them on a regular basis. And that's kind of my life. Like that's like my soul once a week for sure. But it was just like I was starting to feel, there was a combination of a lack of sleep because the drama around the election, and it's just all so much negative news. And I know you're at home are relating to this, but that's definitely a sign too, right there. Is that are you battling some low grade depression or real depression? I mean, mental health issues have spiked. I was just listening to a girlfriend today who specifically ministers in this area, and she's been an advocate for those who struggle with suicidal thoughts because she was at once a victim to trying to take her own life, and has really gotten victory over that, and has ministered to thousands through the years. But 2020, once again, she found herself battling those same going backwards, and how God has helped her through that. So that it's real.
Yeah. So, one of my concerns has been with COVID is that the health professionals have looked at one thing, and that is especially epidemiologists. I didn't say that
Epidemiologists?
right, but epidemiologists. They have focused only on transmission of the virus and the impact of the virus. What they failed to look at is what happens to people's mental health when you close down a society. What happens to families when you close down a society? What happens to people who are fragile psychologically? For example, those that struggle with addictions of drug and alcohol and pornography, and those that struggle with mental health issues. They're fragile, like your friend who struggles with depression. And this has just become an acute problem. So when considering how to address something like a pandemic, you really need to bring into consideration those things. They actually, I think, some ways the cure is worse than the disease in that sense. But the reality is, when you have a pause that's forced on you, you can really be dangerous. But we're talking about the issues of how do you know if you need a pause? And this is a pause that's kind of had negative impact. Let me get to the next one. When you are feeling irregularities, pain in your back, headaches, frequent headaches, stomach problems,
digestive issues,
typically headaches, back pains, and digestion problems usually relate to stress.
Right. They say the body keeps track. So even when you think you're handling things well, your body is actually signaling like I'm not okay.
Yeah. Even your mind has gotten squared away, but your body is trying to catch up. Even after you're emotionally healing. Anyway, the point being that you need a break when those things are coming on. The next one is what?
Yeah, well, and this is something everybody's talked about, but when you have a loss or gain of appetite as well as weight gain or weight loss, which everybody jokes about online, and I'm in that number, the whole COVID-20 situation, finding comfort in food, that's okay as long as it's like not to the extreme, or those who, like I have other family members who internalize their stress and who have dropped so much weight during this time out of stress and worry. So,
and then finally, if you have not seen your friends or your family for a significant amount of time, kind of take an account of what's going on in your world. Have you stopped communicating with people? Have you stopped socializing with people? And I know that this COVID year has been one where you haven't been able to, but you can still connect over, Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it is. You can make phone calls, and you can connect with people as well with social distancing. It's just very important to deal with that. But you had done a message, and actually that's why we wanted to do this. You had done a message that really impacted both of us, you preparing it and me listening to it. And one of the things that you talked about is managing the middle. Could you talk about that a little bit, what it means to manage the middle in between when the promise given and the fulfillment of that promise?
Yeah, so as believers, we know that in times like these, the word is full of passages and scriptures that talk about having hope, look to hope. And there's promises made through scripture, and there's promises made to actual people in scripture from the Lord that sometimes are fulfilled within within a few moments, sometimes fulfilled within a few days, sometimes a few years, and sometimes a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
But God keeps his word. And so you can see the tension in that managing the middle for all of us of, we know this is not going to last forever, but how do we hold that space, that tension, and learn to manage the middle? And I just thought, there's way more of the middle in our life than there is actually living in that moment of the promise.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason for that. There's a purpose for that in our lives. And so what is the purpose for us in managing that middle? And it's full of purpose, obviously, for our soul, our spirit. I don't believe God enjoys us going through painful times. But what I do know is that he longs to, in those moments, shape us for life. Our character, our intimacy with him, how we relate to others, refining, it's like a time of refining. So that is something that has anchored me through this last, through 2020. And I know that as grim as it can look, that God is working.
Yeah.
He's working in us individually, and he's working in us as a people, and he desires so many more bigger things for us.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things that in the month of November, most of us have seen the stock market. It just went so high. It just had a huge spike, and the reason for that was there was Pfizer and Moderna, these two pharmaceutical companies, came up with and believed. I think Pfizer came up with a vaccine for the COVID that is 90% effective, and Moderna came up with 95% effective in their testing. The problem is, the promise was made in November, and it'll be into 2021 before we have, the masses
rolled out,
totally rolled out. So what do we do in the meantime? How do we manage between, okay, that's come, but at least we have a light in the end of the tunnel. One of the things that is so important is, how do we deal with life in that transition? You had talked about in Luke chapter 10 about Mary and Martha. Would you kind of unpack that story?
Yeah. So Jesus came to visit in a village and visited Mary and Martha. And many of you know the story, some of you don't, but they're basically sisters. And when Jesus came in, he was sitting down and was basically talking, telling stories, ministering, teaching. And Mary was the sister that went and sat at his feet and just wanted to hear every word he had to say.
Yeah, those people.
The ones that are content in the pause.
They go,
but,
you know what? I kind of like what you're saying over here. And then there's the other.
Martha was the opposite, in that she was, well, Jesus is here. There's things to be done. There's meals to be cooked. There's things to be prepared. And she's getting her hustle on. Both of those, by the way, are acts of worship. I want people to know that that's not a bad thing. Serving, and
it's a good thing, because that's what you do.
Well, it's a part. There's a time to sit and listen, and there's a time to serve and get up there. But but specifically, the Lord speaks to them because Martha tattles on Mary and says to Jesus, "Look, basically, I'm hustling, my butt over here in the kitchen, and I'm ticked off because Mary's just sitting there soaking it all up." And he calls her out on it and just says, basically, this is the one thing that I value most, is that Mary has discovered it, and that is to sit at my feet and to worship and listen. And so those things are high value: the busyness, the reorganizing of your garage, and the reorganizing of your life in 2020 or whatever. But really, at the end of the day, what he longs for most is time with us and our full attention. And that hit me between the eyes, because seems like we go from, we feel guilty about too much dead time and pause, or we're in hyper work mode like the eights of the world, where you're doing all the right things, but somewhere in there we have to remember that the thing that he values the most, it was the good thing, he says in that scripture, the one thing is what he values most, and that is time with us.
So here's kind of a statement I heard you make, and that is the good thing may take away the one thing. The one thing is worshiping Jesus, like Mary was doing, and Martha was doing the many things. And when she goes to Jesus, hey, tell her she's wrong. He goes,
Yeah.
I'm not telling her she's wrong.
Right.
She's right. She chose
Yeah.
the one thing, the most important thing. And this is, I guess, what I learned from this is in this journey, during a time of a pause, is for us to understand the importance of starting out with worship.
Yes.
Every time I come back, I come back from studying and used to come back from the gym. You remember those days? Anyway, I come back and Kimberly is got her Bible open and she's spending her time in prayer and study of the Word. And I have my time every day just to begin the day with worshiping the Lord. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week because it's so important to start your day this way. If you're struggling with any kind of mental health issues, if you're struggling with a sense of maybe a lack of purpose, and I'll be honest with you, I've been struggling with that
so
myself.
have I, yeah.
You've been hearing that from me quite a bit, and I've been kind of counseling with my wife about, gosh, I feel aimless. I feel misdirected. I feel
lost.
I
Yeah.
feel lost. I'm so used to routine and I'm so used to connection. And maybe you feel that same way. And so what we want to do is encourage you, take this moment of pause. This is going to be once in a lifetime for me, for sure. But for most of you that are younger and in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, this will probably never happen again in your life. And you need to take advantage of this and make sure that you are connecting with God first and foremost and connecting with others and loving well and love God with all your heart, love your neighbors, yourself. That's kind of what it all boils down to.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing that, you're going to struggle through this time. Stop resisting this pause. Don't be like Martha. Be like Mary and say, I'm going to get at the feet of Jesus.
Right. Yep.
And let's make the best out of this once in a lifetime opportunity. There's not going to be a COVID 32. There's not going to be a COVID 29. I'm prophesying now.
Okay.
So anyway, but just relax in this and see what God wants to teach you and how he wants to grow you. Next week, we'll come back and we'll finish this off. There's some really good points we want to make for you. God bless you. Thanks for listening to Hope Rescue Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.